Track and field fans, welcome to Staten Island. No countdown timer today. We're going live right off the bat. Hopefully enough fans have left so the internet is good enough here that you can hear us. Type in the chat. If it's too pixelated, we'll just record a local show and put it up on the podcast. Day 2 of the 2025 USATF Indoor Championships are over. We're going to break it down for you. Nikki Hiltz has completed the double. Hobbs Kessler has completed the double. Nia Akins, were you worried about her? Her new sponsor not running well all year? Well, you don't need to be worried anymore. The old Nia Akins is back. She wins another U.S. title. And then in the performance of the night, or afternoon, excuse me, Josh Hoey. If you didn't know the name before this year, the American record at Melrose should probably have made you know it, but you better know it now. Josh M.F. Hoey, 1:43.24 indoors, folks. He's almost a full second faster than anyone else in American history. He's the second fastest man in world history. He obliterated the 800 field. We'll break that down for you. I am Let'sRun.com co-founder Jonathan Galt. This is a staff writer.
You're Jonathan Galt?
Excuse me. I am Robert Johnson. Folks, it's been tough.
We never make mistakes. First mistake in the history of the Let's Run podcast. But yeah, excited to break it all down. Pretty fun weekend of racing. This, if you're one of those people who's not crazed about times, I feel like there's a balance for both in this wonderful sport of ours. But yeah, I enjoyed the races today. Hoey, obviously the standout. A little bit of a surprise in the women's 60. I thought this was going to be sort of the crowning moment for Jacia Sears, who's emerging as one of the world's top sprinters. She gets beaten by Sarah Buns. Ronnie Bates, he a few years away. Quincy Wilson couldn't quite get it done in the 400 against the pros. Great ran. Chris Bailey. A lot to break down. But we'll start with men's 800.
I mean, after yesterday, Hoey looked good. He's the American record holder. He went wire to wire, but I think he had the slowest winning time of anybody in the heats. And the revelation yesterday was Wes Ferguson, the former Nebraska Kearney Division II star, closed in 25.9, made Jonah Koech look slow, beat him by a full second in a 1:45 race. And we're like, how will that kick play out today? And he
did kick. Like, I was wondering where he was. I'm like, he's not even close to the lead. What's going on? But then I was looking at how strung out that field was. Usually indoor 800s, they get bunched up. That's what happened in the women's race, even though that one wasn't exactly slow. This one, I was like, wow, they're really strung out. Like, they must be moving here, and they were. Hoey went out in 50.36. Okay. And the crazy thing was, like, I'm looking at that. Wes Ferguson closed great. He closed in 26.10. It was the fastest in the field. And he ran 1:44.9, which is a PB. It's a great time indoors. And he wasn't really close because Hoey ran 1:43.2, just a masterpiece from the front. And Brandon Miller, who stuck on Hoey for almost the whole way until about 100, 120 to go, he held on for second, 1:44.26. He showed that making the Olympics, he's continued to build on that. So all three of these guys ran great races.
And none of them are none of them have any reason to be upset. I mean, I talked to Brandon Miller. He's like, look, I obviously the competitor in me, I wanted to win that race, but it was almost a 1 full second PB. At Texas A&M, Miller ran 1:45.24 indoors. Today he runs 1:44.26, so 0.98 of a PB. But Josh Hoey was just too good. We were staying in the same hotel as the Brooks Beast, and walking out to the car this morning, I ran into Coach Danny Mackey. By the way, the Beasts were sensational today. They got Valerie Tobias on the women's 800-meter team as well. Her first time under 2. We'll talk about that later. But I saw Danny on the street, and I said, talking about the meet and everything. And I said, hey, man, like, what are you most excited for? He's like, the 800. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if he said men's, but he had two, a lot of people in the 800. But I said, well, what about that Ferguson kick? And he's like, well, I told Brandon Miller, man, you need to take that kick out of him, because that kick, he was very impressed by it. So they wanted a fast race. They thought Hoey would take it, and he got a fast race. But I did ask Coach Mackey. I said, hey, what do you think is going to happen? He said, I think Hoey's going to go I think he's going to run from the front and win it. And I said, really? What about that kick? 25.9. He's like, did you watch his American record race at Melrose? He ran a lot of that in lane 2. I think in reality, a lot of it was just on the outside of lane 1. He's like, I think he can run 1:43 flat. And he almost did that today. 1:43.24 Again, this is number 2 in world history. The only person who's ever run faster is the great Wilson Kipketer, 1:42.67. So just incredible for Hoey. And he's like, look, I felt really good, in the warm up. I just thought I could do it today, and he delivered. His brother Jonah ran a second PB yesterday in the prelims, an amazing thing. And we've got his coach listening live, Justin Rinaldi, in the chat box. He was extremely complimentary of Justin. He's like, look, this guy's the most dedicated coach in the world. I said, well, how does he watch in Australia? He's like, well, sometimes he if he can find a stream, he'll watch, but even if he can't watch, he'll wake up in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m., and just look at the live splits popping up on the screen. So that's amazing. Justin, let us know. Did you watch it live? Did you have a stream, or are you just looking at the live splits? So incredible stuff. Now, and I did ask, and we've had trouble uploading the videos to YouTube. They'll be up shortly. I asked Hoey, I said, hey, man, your improvement's incredible, but some people may think it's too good to be true. What do you think? And he's like, I don't worry about them, basically. He's like, I know how hard I work. I've got a great coach. Basically, what is worrying about these doubters going to do for me?
He said all the people close to him know what he's about, and that's what he relied on. So, yeah, that was his explanation to Robert's question. And again, this sort of improvement, it is, you don't see a guy at age 24 when he was last year going from 147 to 143 in one season. That's rare when you've been a pro for 6 years, but it's also rare to run 147 in high school. He was always a big talent. He has, now he's running 143, which is like, Donovan Brazier was a 147 guy in high school. He became a 143 guy quite quickly. Hoey, it's taken a lot longer, and it all came in one, basically the last 12 months, but he's even better than he was last year. He's run faster than he did outdoors. He was 143.8, I think, last year. Now he's 143.2. You said this is the company he's in, Robert. It's Wilson Kipketer and him. That's the list, 1-2 all time world indoors. And you got to remember, there are some events where indoors, I think, is as fast, sometimes faster than outdoors. The 800 is not one of them. The 800, if you can run 143 indoors, you can probably run 142, 141 high outdoors. I don't know if it's a full second, but Wilson Kipketer, let's take him for example. 142.67, that was his indoor PB. His world record, which stood for a long time, was 141.11, 1.5 seconds faster. So, just 143.2 indoors by an American's crazy.
Yeah. The compliments for Hoey are just coming in. Evan Bollinger on YouTube was saying, Hoey looks like the prototypical 800-meter runner. No wonder he was a beast in high school. Justin was revealed he was watching the live splits. John, maybe we should have a new Let's Run rule. If we're at a meet and it's not on TV in Australia, we can give Justin our WhatsApp number. He calls me. I can give him a play-by-play. I've got some play-by-play experience about it. Hoey's in the lead.
I feel like the more efficient solution would just be for you to broadcast the with your phone, you're not broadcasting it nationally, but I've seen that they do that. Like, no, I think who's the pole vaulter at Princeton Sandra Guttormson. I think after his attempts in the pole vault at NCAA's, like, he'd have the coach filming them, or his brother would film them and then send them back to Norway before the next attempt, so that his coach could kind of give input and everything. And so maybe Rojo becomes that for the 800. I don't know.
Some lovers and haters on the message board chat. One's asking Coach Rinaldi if Hoey's doping. Another is saying that Hoey reminds him of Seb Coe. Fantastic talent.
Only on Let'sRun.com.
Hey, we're the voice of the fans, folks. But it's interesting because Isaiah, coming into this meet, there was 3 Americans who had run under 146. And in the final today, the top 5 all ran 145.82 or better. Isaiah Harris of the Brooks Beast, who had made the last 2 World Championship indoor teams, actually equaled his PB today, 145.64, is only 4th. And, I thought he was a great teammate. He was happy for Brandon. I saw him put his arm around him. Brandon's on the indoor team. Harris is not. And then Ferguson was saying, the Brooks Beast coach, Danny Mackey, was saying, he's like, look, I reached out to Ferguson, but he really wants to stay in Nebraska. And I asked Ferguson about that because I said, I heard you're close to getting a deal. He's like, yeah, I haven't wanted to leave Nebraska. I know that's what most pros do, but that's where my family is. My girlfriend's starting 4 years of dental school. I would like to stay there. He's like, hopefully this big race today can get me a contract where they'll let me, continue to do what I do in Nebraska.
I think it will. I think Brand's watching this. You see how good this guy is. He was a D2 guy. I think the potential is there for him to be even better. Again, we're saying 144.9 indoors. certainly can run faster outdoors. He said yesterday he thinks he can run 143, but you're limiting your options as a pro. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to stay in Nebraska, that is something that certain brands just aren't going to be interested in. And, it seems like he's okay with that and he acknowledges that. But he's also got a good training situation. I'm excited to see his progression. Certainly a big weekend. He certainly bumped his value up a few K with the performances on Staten Island.
All right, let's move to the women's 800. And it was – we'll pull up Nia Aikens' 2025 races before today. But this race, after yesterday's prelims, when we were doing the show yesterday, by the way, if you're not familiar with the show, we do a podcast every Monday or Tuesday for Let's Run. Then we do a bonus podcast for Supporters Club members on every Friday. We call it the Friday 15. Sometimes we go live and meet Saturday podcast, Sunday podcast. You want this as a podcast. You want a sweet T-shirt like this. We got a Ingebrigtsen themed T-shirt. We've got all sorts of T-shirts in this show. Join the Supporters Club today. Let'sRun.com/subscribe. Let'sRun.com/subscribe. But after the prelims yesterday, I didn't know who to pick because the U.S. number 1 did not make the final. The U.S. number 3, the fastest woman for the U.S. from 2024 did not make the final. I just didn't have faith in anybody winning this. Nia Aikens has been winning the U.S. titles in recent years, but she
got beat indoors last year, didn't even make the team.
Yeah, and she had switched, from the Brooks Beast to Hoka, training under a new coach, Derek Thompson in Philadelphia, had not run well at all, had not broken 201 this year. John saw her step off the track last week in Boston in a 201 race at 600 meters. But she wins her heat yesterday, and then she looked like the Nia Aikens of old today. Goes out on 60.06, negative split, closes in 29.8, 29.4, 159.31. That's an indoor PB. She beats Valerie Tobias at the Brooks Beast. Tobias just went out, got a lead on the field, and just said, hey, I was going for it. And she was absolutely thrilled. I mean, the goosebumps I'm feeling just from talking to her. When you see an athlete who was 6th at her last 2 NCAAs. I think her best finish was 3rd or 4th. This was not somebody contending for titles. She gets a pro deal with the Brooks Beast, and to see her break 2 for the first time and punch her ticket to Worlds at a U.S. Championships was really cool. And she was pumped about it, and she was great. She's like, hey, my former teammate made it. I made it. I'm so excited. 159. They said I could always do it, and now she's done it. So congratulations, Valerie. And that puts them in the medal hunt because only a couple women had broken 2 worldwide this year. So it's not been extremely strong with Neil Keeley Hodgkinson, Noah Thingmo, etc.
Yeah, and the U.S. has had a pretty good track record at World Indoors in the 800. Going back to 2014, Chanel Price won that. Boris Berrien won in 2016. Ajay Wilson in 2022. And, of course, Bryce Hoppel last year. So I think certainly Hoey is going to be the heavy, heavy favorite in the men's race. Women's side, who knows what they can do, but I think they'll be in the mix. If Sige Daguma is there from Ethiopia, I'd certainly have her a bit above those two, but they're in a good spot. And Aikens is very interesting because I asked her, what changed? Because she acknowledged her races hadn't been that great this season, and she said she had a panic attack in Boston last week, and that's why she stepped off the track. And she said she did something called exposure therapy over the last week, which is essentially she stares at a screen and images that could create panic flash up on the screen. They're quite personal to her. She didn't want to share the specifics, but she said that helped because she was facing these panic-inducing moments, and she was actually thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's where I go to mentally if I face them. And, this is a pretty big stage. National championships, national television. She's coming in, and she took care of business. She didn't have any issues and ran really strong today. So that was great to see from her. And I will say, going into this meet, I picked Sage Hurd-de-Klerk for the win. She ends up 3rd, just misses out on another U.S. team. She's been close a few times before, not quite there today, though she did run an indoor PB. And looking as they were going on the start line, Robert, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Am I just going to be kicking myself I didn't pick Nia Aikens because she's the best and most talented runner in this field? And she's just I'm going to feel dumb if I'm why do I pick against the best runner, even if she wasn't quite at her best right now? Actually, turns out she's closer to her best than we thought. And yeah, I think that the talent kind of won out here a bit in the end.
Yeah, I don't think that was crazy. We've seen what's been happening indoors. She clearly mentally was struggling, left the beast, has a new coach, dropping out of races. to yesterday looked good, but you got to do it again today. And
fair
was
doubt. Yeah. There's a doubt that was, there's a reason there was a doubt, but she proved the doubt is wrong. Great win for Nia.
I mean, Herta Clucker's got to be upset. I don't think she's ever made a team. And then same thing with, I think Kayla Edwards has made a team, but Kayla really wanted to win her first U.S. title. She's unsponsored. She's 31 years of age. She was running in second for most of the race. She ends up fourth in 2 flat 0.36. All right, moving on to the 1500s. Up first were the women. And this, in the end, really was no. I mean, it was Nikki Hiltz show. I mean, she won the 3,000 yesterday in a nice battle with Shelby Houlihan. And considering Shelby told me, I think I'm a little bit stronger than I am fast, I'm like, okay, I think Hiltz is going to complete the double, and she did that. I thought she ran a good tactical race. She closed in 28:23, fastest of the night. Sinclair Johnson, former Bowerman Track Club member, former Union Athletic Club member, now training, I think under the guidance of her boyfriend, right?
Craig Nowak, fiance now.
Fiance.
Yes.
She's closed in 28:27. She's second, 4:06.05. So good to see her on another team. But now Hiltz is not going to go. So the third spot was important, and that goes to Heather McLean of New Balance, 4:06.69, just ahead of Shelby Houlihan, 4:06.82. Now, McLean may not have the standard, but you still have 2 weeks to chase, so we'll see, right?
Yeah, McLean, I don't know. I can check her exact position. I think she's going to probably be okay to get in. In terms of like this race as a whole, Nikki ran very strong tactically, and I don't think Shelby did. I think this one actually exposed her for the time she's been away, because this was a slower race than yesterday, and yesterday wasn't super fast. But yesterday Shelby was at the front controlling things. This time she's sort of further back, and I'm just like, even if she kicks well, she has too much ground to give up, whereas Nikki positioned themselves very well during this one. And McLean got up there and was in pretty good position, just didn't have it. And I think Sinclair Johnson, too, was coming from a little, she was better positioned than Houlihan, obviously. And she said she was actually happy she ran more aggressively than at Millrose, where she was only fifth in that race. But Nikki just got in the right spot and also probably has the best kick. I mean, Nikki closed 28:23, which was the fastest last lap. So those two things, the best kicker, also getting in the best position, it was a great tactical win from Nikki Hiltz here. And the one thing I will say, just as a fan of American distance running, I would like to know what Nikki Hiltz could do at World Indoors. And I know they've got Grand Slam track to focus on, but Nikki was the silver medalist last year. And I think the way they've been running this indoor season, they're clearly in shape to do something pretty special. And this is a meet where, I don't think Faith Kipyegon never shows up. So how could Nikki do against like Ferwani Hailu, who beat them last year at World Indoors, or someone like of that ilk? I think it would be fun to see. And we're not going to see it, but I do get the Grand Slam commitment.
Right, but I can't imagine Nikki's getting a huge appearance fee. Actually, when I was talking to Danny Mackey in the street today, I said, it was interesting. I said, well, what's Josh Kerr going to do? He was ready for Millrose. He gets sick. He's like, well, we looked into getting a wild card for World Indoors, see if we could do that. But it's just, the travel is a lot, particularly if you're trying to get ready for Grand Slam track. And I said, what's the appeal of Grand Slam track? He's like, the financial windfall for these guys is huge. So someone like Kerr, though, is going to be getting a lot more money than Hiltz, because in addition to the $100,000 potentially for first place prize money, he's got a 3-year appearance fee on top of that. So he's committed to the series for 3 years with a huge appearance fee on top of the prize money, which is wild. So,
and also for the record, someone's asking, how does McLean not have the standard? She's been near the front of some major races this year. She has, but she doesn't actually have the standard right now. And she's barely qualified by the top list. I think that probably will end up being all right, because some people ahead of her will scratch, but they take 30 and she's, in 30th at the moment. There will be an American full scratch ahead of her. But that's why the standards are fairly aggressive. It's 4:03 in the 1500 or 4:22.5 in the mile. McLean's run 4:23 this season. So
I guess it's possible Houlihan could end up doing double.
I think McLean will be fine, but we'll see.
Yeah, you're talking about Houlihan's tactics. I interviewed her. That'll be up on YouTube soon. By the way, like and follow us on YouTube. And she's like, yeah, that was not good tactically. It was actually atrocious. Like, she'd made all the mistakes that I always say never to do. So she was running in the back. I mean, if you look at the results timing. She's in 12th place at 300. And then she moves up a little bit around the 500 meter mark, but then she ends up 7th, and then she moves back in 9th. So around one point, around like probably 700 or 800 meters, she made a huge move like up on the outside, like into lane 3. And I'm like, Hiltz was actually moving up at that point because Hiltz was mid-pack at the start and moved up and then just went to the front and kept going. And what Houlihan did was what I said don't do. She moved up, and then the turn came, and she didn't want to run the whole thing on the turn, so she came back in and ended up in the back. So she just wasted a lot of energy and then had to make another move. Now, obviously you've got one move in the 8. Sometimes you've got 2 in the 1500, but it was 2 to get to the front, and then she had to do a big kick at the end. So she's just basically requiring 3 moves when most people only have 2. So I think tactically, if she had been better, it would have been interesting to see if she could have been there, outkick Sinclair Johnson. But I don't think anyone was out kicking Nikki Hiltz. They had a great race. Someone said I said she by mistake earlier. Like, Nikki's a biological female, but I will try to get the pronouns right if I can.
One interesting thing I did ask Nikki, because Nikki's sponsored by Lululemon, and their coach, Mike Smith, is now one of these Swoosh TC Nike coaches. And it's been reported that those athletes who aren't Nike athletes will be grandfathered in, but by the end of their contract, they have to go with Nike. So I said, where does that leave you? Because Lululemon doesn't make spikes. Nikki was actually wearing Nike spikes today. And they teased something, just said, oh, there's an announcement coming soon. So I wonder if that means like Lululemon's on board with Nikki getting a Nike contract or what's going to happen. But expect news to come on that front fairly soon.
By the way, if you want my opinions on Swoosh Track Club, Nike execs, you're probably listening. If you do it, Swoosh Track Club, Flag, Swoosh Track Club, Utah, Swoosh Track Club. What's the other one?
Utah, Eugene.
Yeah. I'm fine with it. Each team needs to have their own uniform. Like, you could have the same uniform, but different colors. If you just have one Swoosh Track Club with one uniform, it's the dumbest idea ever. So you got to go with the LA. With the Flag, the Utah, Eugene. You got to have different colored uniforms for each team. Otherwise, it's just whoever did that should be fired.
Well, I'm getting flashbacks to the mid 2000s where there were 3 sets of training groups wearing the Oregon TC singlet at national championships. Except, it was quite confusing at the time.
All right, men's 1500 was the last distance final of the championships, and after he won the 3000, after he'd run the 346 mile, I think most people thought that Hobbs Kessler would be your champion, and it was masterclass. Matthew Centrowitz would be proud of this. Wasn't 350 winning time. It was a 338 race, but Kessler went to the front and just controlled it. And I thought this was, obviously he is faster than everybody. It's much easier to control the races from the front when you're the best guy in the field. Centrowitz was really great in 2016 for most of the year, but, they go out and it was just under 60-second pace, like 74, 75 at 500, 245.08 at 1100, but just never gave up the lead and had all the answers. Ends up winning 338.82. Adidas is Sam Frankel, so Adidas goes 1-2, 339.14. And with Kessler not going to World Indoors, third was important. Former Washington indoor star, the guys won 2 indoor mile titles, was great indoors yet again today. Luke Hauser, now of the Atlanta Track Club, 339.27 ahead of Vincent Ciotti. And, stuff like that. Not a good race, by the way, for Joe Wascom, 11th, and Eric Holt was last in 12th.
What has happened to Eric Holt? He was sensation last spring, and that's rough for him. And Wascom at least put himself up there. I didn't realize Eric Holt was in the race until you just told me that, Robert. Wascom was at least at the front, but he didn't close well at all. But he's always been better outdoors than indoors. I was interested, though, Luke Hauser, looking at some of his races, not very impressive to start the season. He ran that Dr. Sanders Scorcher meet back in January, 4:03 in the mile there. And then he ran a 3K at BU. He only ran 8:03. Oh, sorry, Boston. I think it was maybe the New Balance meet. He only ran 8:03 there. Not very good, but he has improved a little bit since then. He ran 3:56 in Philly, then 3:53 at BU last weekend. And he just said, I didn't really race last summer until January. I didn't run cross country like I usually do. It's my first season as a pro. And I feel like I was just rusty working back into things, but he feels like he's in good shape now. I did ask him, remember he signed with the Brooks Beast last year. coming out of the University of Washington. And then he moved to the Atlanta Track Club shortly thereafter. And Brooks told us it was because of violations of team rules. So I asked him, why'd you leave? What happened? He's like, well, I had a conversation with Brooks and we just kind of agreed. And like, it wasn't going to be the great situation for me. I had to kind of put it behind me and move on. And I was like, well, it was your decision or Brooks' decision? He's like, yeah, it was Brooks' decision. So he's just sort of trying to move on from the incident, says he doesn't have any regrets, but he's pretty happy with working with Tommy Nohilly in the Atlanta Track Club right now.
Yeah, good race for them. And why don't you pull up the road to Nanjing? Because again, the standards and the men's 1500 are tight. Talking to Sam Prankel, the runner-up, Prankel has made some road teams. I think he's got a road medal, right? But he's never making the outdoor teams. He's been going at it for quite a long time. I thought it was interesting to him. He's like, look, we're getting faster every year because of technology. He's like, he'd be the perfect guy to talk because his career dates to the pre-super shoot era. So check the interview out on YouTube. But he was saying that he's changing things up. He's like, look, if I keep doing the same thing, I'm not going to make the team. So I'm trying like more threshold or constantly tinkering with the training with Coach Andy Powell to try to he said that the mile workouts aren't really that much different, but the rest of his training is changing to try to get onto one of these outdoor teams to see what happens. And then he was talking about the standard. He's like, well, I may have to go to BU next weekend. He's like, I'm overdue for a mile PB anyways. So we could have some guys chasing the standard next weekend at BU.
I mean, almost everyone in this race would have to chase the standard because Kessler's not going. The only guy in this race who has the standard or would be qualified by top list at the moment, so that's basically by season's best, is Joe Waska. So Hauser said he would chase the standard if he gets a chance, and we could see Prankel again doing it, and both will have a chance, certainly, if not to get the standard, to move up and maybe get in position to get a World Athletics invite. But it's possible the U.S. could have 0 entrants in this. I think Wascom would be accepted at the moment if he tried to enter. But, yeah, it's kind of a weird situation at the moment.
But what's the standard? I think they can get it.
It's 350.50 in the mile or 333.50 in the 1500.
I mean, again, World Athletics, get your act together. We've got 5 348 milers. I guess they weren't all in this field, but
no, this is a situation where I would say, well, okay, yeah, if they were all had the standard, we have one guy with the standard in this race. So I don't think USA should automatically just be awarded 2 spots because of that.
And Evan Bollinger on YouTube says Hobbs has the best or close to 800 mobility of any of the top 800 guys, and his strength is looking good as ever. Could he medal in Tokyo? This is what's wrong with the sport, though. I want to talk about this, but it's like, couldn't he medal in Nanjing? But again, it's like, okay, we're going to go cash a check. He's not even in Grand Slam track. So the fact that he's not going to this is extremely upsetting to me. Like, come on, dude. You talk about racing for championships and titles. Like, you came here. It was great. Finish the deal at indoors. Get the gold medal. And then, if the Hawkers of the world would show up, if the Ingebrigtsens of the world would show up, then it would mean a lot, and we'd have a fun meet. But could he medal in Tokyo? I think he can, but I don't think his kick's any better. Well, look, he just lost to Nagoose in a kick. Goose led from the front and did all the work. I don't think his kick's as good as Hawker's. I certainly don't think it's as good as Josh Kerr's. And I asked Brandon Miller about that. I said, hey, man, we're going to see Josh Kerr in some 800s. What do you think he can do? He said, well, we've only worked out like once ever. It was 400-meter repeats. He said it was more of a miler workout last year. He's like, but Josh did beat me when I was coming off injury last year at 800. He's like, I think he can run 143. So I would put Kerr's kick ahead of Kessler's. I would put certainly Hawker. Nagoose is beating him, and then you've got Ingebrigtsen. So it's not going to be easy for Hobbs to medal. And then you've got Niels Leros coming up from behind. This is why the men's 1500, when everybody's there, is the best event in track and field. Because you've got the tactics, you've got the leading, you've got the pacing. In sprinting, you've got some loaded events, but you don't have the tactics. You don't have that aspect of it. So, good question, though. One comment, thinking about kicks and stuff like that. I watched the Cooper Tier. You were there, John. The Cooper Tier Hobbs Kessler 5,000-meter run from Thursday night or Friday.
Cooper Tier Cole Hawker Friday night. Yeah.
5,000. And, they both ran 12:57. They both got the standard. this meet kind of, to me, show what's wrong with the sport. They're skipping this meet to get a standard for outdoors. We're always chasing the standards. Again, let the countries have it and then let the races decide. But when I saw that race, I watched the last lap today. I was like, Hawker's struggling to beat Cooper Tier in a kick. He's not going to be medaling in the 5,000 this year. I still think maybe he's stronger this year and can get on the U.S. team for the 5,000, but I think he's got a ways to go unless all the African talents in the marathon.
Well, he's struggling to do it in a 12:57 race, and the way the 5,000 is being run on the circuit these days, 12:57, even with some of the East Africans, 12:57 could almost be described as tactical. So I do think he's got some work to be done, and he acknowledged that after the race. But he's also like, "Look, I've got 6 months till USA's. I think I can put in some good training blocks ahead of then and keep building his fitness. I think he's fitter than, put it this way, he ran 12:58 the LA Grand Prix in May of 2024. And he's like, look, I'm ahead of where I was in May 2024, and May 2024 was ahead of where I was indoors in 2024. So he's viewing this as progress. And I think that's a good way to look at it. And there might be a few more training cycles, another year or two, until he really is on that level in the 5K. But he's making progress. And for the 5K guys, I'd be worried about that because I'm like, I don't want an Olympic champion in the 1500 coming into my event and being on my shoulder with 200 to go. But we have seen Milrose, Fisher outkicked him. And even this meet, Dylan Jacobs, who's a 5K, 10K guy, almost outkicked Hobbs Kessler. So you really, you do need that strength to be able to deploy that kick at the end of the races even if you're a 1500 guy with a crazy speed.
If you're just joining us, Let's Run co-founder Robert Johnson, Jonathan Galt. This is a bonus podcast. You want it as a podcast? Don't want to have to watch it live. Join the Supporters Club today. Enter the code Let'sRun.com/subscribe. Enter the code GOAT50 for new subscribers. Get 50% off your first year. So, anyways, I've got a long drive back. John's got to head to the Chinese embassy. So, to get an embassy as a journalist, as a sports journalist, it's more difficult. To get a visa to go to China to cover World Indoors. It's not just like a tourist visa. You have to go to the embassy, submit your application. Consulate. And the closest one to where he lives in Boston is New York. So he had to come down here. He drove down here, submit the application, and then go back and pick it up several days later. So when we went to the World Outdoors in Beijing, I was able to do it for the whole team. And I live in Baltimore, which is close to DC, but it's kind of wild, right?
I couldn't employ the Rojo courier service this time around, so doing it myself. I mean, hopefully it all works out all right, but that's the lengths we go to here at Let'sRun.com to give you boots on the ground coverage from World Indoors. Robert, anything else you want to hit up? Because we got a bunch of recaps to write on today's action, and I know you want to get back. Full. It's a nice. Was it like a raucous, amazing atmosphere? Not really, but it was good enough. It's fine.
He asked, think of the atmosphere. Like, I was underneath with the athletes. I wasn't up much. What was the crowd? He's like, it seemed a little dead to me. I was not impressed yesterday. There was a much bigger buzz today. Just walking in the lobby, it was packed. I ran into an old runner of mine at Cornell with his 2 kids. Chef, we love you. And there was just a lot of people getting souvenirs, buying stuff at the USATF shop. And then I walked inside, and it was pretty full. So
I mean, if you had to pick which day to go, you'd go today because there were more finals.
Nice atmosphere, not drawn out. Yeah, I thought the atmosphere was good today. I've been impressed. I mean, it's a beautiful facility right on the water. So, was it amazing? No. But was today worthy of a U.S. championship? The atmosphere, yes. It was good atmosphere, good buzz, pretty nice crowd. So, but my biggest takeaways was I just think Josh Hoey, wow. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I hope it's true that, people have been burned by if it's too good to be true, sometimes it is. But how cool is it? This guy just runs the second fastest time in U.S. history. We've already got 3 American distance world records this winter. We could have a 4th. Is that crazy to think? We could have an American run a world record in the 800, the mile, the 3,000, and the 5,000 this year, and then have his coach on the live feed. in Australia. What time is it in Australia, by the way?
Taking it, I mean, another 6/10 in 800, that is still significant. I don't think that would go down, but yeah, to have Americans go number 1 all time in the 3K and 5K, number 1 all time in the mile, now bumped down to number 2, also number 3 with Hobbs Kessler, and number 2 all time in the 800. It is pretty nuts. It does tell you Americans take the indoor season more seriously than some of their East African counterparts, but it also tells you we've got a rich glut of American talent in men's middle distances right now.
Yeah, and doubles from Kessler and Hiltz were amazing. It was, interesting. It's a storyline. It's good for journalism in terms of having Houlihan back, whatever you think of that. And then I thought it was just by coincidence, we're in the same hotel as the Brooks Beast, and they had a great, particularly 800, with Valerie breaking 2 and the big PB for
Brandon
Miller. So fun USAs, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming to Let's Run. Check out the written recaps. It'll be up shortly. We've got Thoughts Leader, our Supporters Club member, helping us out today. And then join the Supporters Club for this as a podcast if you missed the beginning of it. And we'll see you back on a regular pod on Monday or Tuesday. Until then, good night.